Owned by Occidental Petroleum, Piper Alpha was spectacularly productive. In June 1988, producing 10% of Britain's North Sea oil. It had been built in 1976, initially only to extract oil, but it was later adapted to produce gas as well. This left an unfortunate legacy in its design. The platform was made up of 4 modules, separated by fireproofed walls, arranged so that the most dangerous works, such as drilling, were as far from the accommodation block as possible. When Piper was belatedly fitted for gas extraction, some of the gas compression works had to be sited close to sensitive areas, such as the control room. This was to have tragic consequences. In the weeks leading up to July the 6th, a new gas pipeline was being installed, which involved welding work and changes to the normal operating routine. The platform was not shut down while work progressed. Several small gas leaks had been reported, though this was not unusual. On July the 6th, one other piece of work was going on. The platform had 2 large pumps, A and B, which pressurized the gas and sent it onto shore. Pump A had been taken out of service that morning and a pressure valve removed from it for servicing. The open pipe was temporarily sealed with a metal plate. The pressure valve was meant to be replaced by the end of the day, but the job overran.
All right, lads, pack it up. We're not running over here. I'll have to finish in the morning, I guess.
The engineer in charge filled out the permit to work form, which let everyone know that the pump was out of action and couldn't be used. In fact, 2 permits had been taken out that morning for the pump. One was for the work on the pressure valve, the other for a routine overhaul, which would last 2 weeks but hadn't yet begun. The 2 permits became separated. When work finished for the day, the engineer returned the permit for the pressure valve to the control room. Finding the supervisor busy, he signed off the permit to work. He failed to inform the supervisor that the valve was off the pump and went off shift. No one knows what became of the permit for the pressure valve.
The permit to work system on Piper had degraded. It hadn't been working well for many, many months. They weren't, in fact, thinking through in a proper way the risks of the process before they filled the permit in. Otherwise, a number of the things that occurred at the time couldn't possibly have occurred. And the whole thing was treated, it would appear, more or less as a formality.
Another irregular practice was taking place that evening. In common with other platforms, Piper Alpha had an automatic fire deluge system. When triggered, diesel pumps would suck up huge amounts of seawater to douse any fires. But when divers were at work, the diesel pumps were switched over from automatic to manual start to prevent any divers being sucked up by the intakes. On other rigs, the pumps were switched to manual only if the divers were very near the intakes. But on Piper, they were switched over regardless of where the divers were working, so the firefighting system could only be started by hand. At 9:45, the swift spiral to disaster began.
Phase 1 operator, over. We've got a trip on B pump. Better get down here and have a look at it, over.
The second gas pump, Pump B, which had not been taken out of service, had stopped. If it could not be restarted within minutes, the gas supply for the rig would have to be shut down. Since the platform was powered by gas-fueled generators, the danger was that it could lose all power. If drilling was going on, the drill could get stuck at enormous cost. The supervisor kept a watchful eye as Pump B repeatedly failed to restart.
Okay. Look, hold on a second. What's up?
Can't get it started.
How come?
I don't know. There's lube oil on the floor. Someone's talking about hydrates. Pump B's out for maintenance.
Right.
But it's a 2-week job. They only started it today. It's only been electrically isolated, I think. Where's the PTW for it?
The engineer retrieved the permit for the 2-week maintenance job on Pump A. He was not aware that there was a second permit for the work on the pressure valve, so he didn't know that it had been removed.
I'll sign it off. We'll get Pump A back on. We can use that one.
All right.
Maintenance, lead hand. Contact control room.
Give them the okay and tell them we're going to go straight away with it, all right?
Since the maintenance work hadn't yet started on Pump A, the supervisor assumed that it would be safe to restart.
Have you earthed it yet? Not yet. Come on, we've got 2 or 3 minutes here. Come on.
As Pump A was prepared for restarting, no one noticed that the vital pressure valve was missing, since the metal plate was 15 feet up and hidden by machinery.
Moved it yet? Come on! We're short of time here.
Just before 10 o'clock, the operators restarted Pump A.
All right, give that a go. That's on zone 3.
Maintenance lead hand, we've got a trip on 2 of the centrifugal compressors, over.
As gas flowed into the pump at high pressure, the strain became too much for the temporary metal plate. With 70 kilograms of gas escaping in under 30 seconds, alarms went off everywhere. The supervisor hit the emergency shutdown, closing huge valves in the pipes rising from the seabed. This stopped oil and gas production and should have isolated the rig. But the blast had blown down fireproofed walls to the adjoining oil separation area, rupturing pipes and, as this footage taken just minutes after the explosion shows, starting an oil fire. At this point, it's probable only 2 men had been killed, and the situation was far from hopeless. Other rigs had faced similar oil fires and either put them out or evacuated the men. But Piper's emergency procedures simply collapsed. Control was centered around the rig's manager, who was supposed to coordinate firefighting and evacuation from the radio room.
Put out a mayday.
Mayday, mayday, mayday. Explosion and fire on the oil rig, on the platform, and we're abandoning the rig.
But the radio room itself was damaged, and it appears that no attempt was made to use the public address system.
There's a fire.
Mayday, mayday, mayday. We're abandoning the radio room. We're abandoning the radio room.
Transcripts of the maydays reveal that no indication was given to the emergency services of how the rig was to be abandoned. Worse still, no one told the men on board what to do. From what training they had received, the men were supposed to muster at their lifeboat stations and await instructions over the tannoy. But the fire stopped them from reaching the boats, so they assembled in the fireproofed accommodation block to await evacuation by helicopter. Over 100 men gathered in the galley area, just beneath the helideck. But the wind was blowing smoke and flames over the helideck, making landing impossible. The men were given no further instructions other than to wait. Although the accommodation block was gradually filling with smoke, at no point was there an organized attempt to lead them to safety. When the fire deluge system failed to start, 2 men bravely attempted to reach the vital diesel pumps that had been switched to manual. They never made it and were never seen again. At 10:20, the Tartan gas pipeline melted and burst. Three tons of gas were coming out of the ruptured pipe every second, 1.5 times the entire UK gas consumption in an area just 75 meters square. After withstanding the intense heat for over an hour, the accommodation block finally slid into the sea, and most of the rig fell after it. Of the 226 men who had been on board Piper Alpha, 166 were dead. One more died later in hospital. Only 61 men survived, almost all because they had decided to ignore what little training they had been given and jumped from the burning rig.
I'll run ahead of you.
Won't just take us through your escape. The escape was we managed to get outside after about an hour going about the accommodation. We get out and into a fab shop. When the rig started tilting over, the fab shop tilted over, and believe it or believe it not, the jib of a crane, toppled, and that made a bridge, that we could get along to the edge and jump into the water from there.
How far did you have to jump?
About 100 feet.
Occidental destroyed the twisted remains of Piper Alpha within a year. They have since sold off their interests and left the North Sea.
Will you go back to work offshore?
No, I don't think so. No.